Hey, Margie.
Good morning. How are you, Arthur?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm okay. Thank you.
All right. It's you, me, and Isaac. We get many people saying they were going to come.
We had about 5 RSVPs, and a couple were going to be late because I'm at an appointment, and one I'm going to be got to leave early. But so we had about 5 RSVPs, and we'll just see. Guess who shows?
Did you get the email from Adam Alvarez? The
I did.
Yeah, he said, well, we've got other people that want to be involved. He said like 15 names, right?
Yeah.
They don't have anything to do now that there's not going to be a merger. Right?
But I like your response. It'd be good to have one consistent, and then they can bring in whoever they wish to. We won't turn people down, but it'd be nice to have a single point of contact if we could.
Right. Okay. Matt Tisdale from GridWorks is going to monitor. And he's currently looking for the right person to be a facilitator ongoing. We had a nice meeting with a woman named Frances Cleveland, who's really, like, if we could get her, it would be great. She did the California process and still is doing the California process. And she's just like so down to earth and so together that it would be really helpful. So I think that, I'm sorry to say that the commission's budget is tapped out from now until the beginning of the year, unless they were getting some supplemental money. So it's going to be touch and go as to whether we can find a way to pay you more money than what you're signed up for. But I'll keep you informed about that.
Okay, we'll just press forward until it's done.
Yeah, well, we got a positive response. There are two things. One, on the community solar, we got they promised us the ability to actually tap the $500,000 that we're expecting from application fees for that. And there was also a supplemental budget and an ability to move money unspent from other programs around in the agency. And those are really great flexibility things. So I'll just keep you informed.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna mute myself here for a couple of minutes.
Good morning, Anthony and Leon. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Hello, good morning. Hello, Margie. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. We're just giving a few minutes for folks to log on, and Arthur will be with us here. He's online. He's just attending to a little bit of paperwork, and he'll come back on here shortly. So thank you all for joining us. We'll do formal introductions here in a few minutes.
Hey, everybody, Arthur O'Donnell here. We have 20 participants, and while people seem to be joining us on a moment-by-moment basis, I thought that we'd at least start recognizing your time. Thank you so very much for joining us. We are embarking on the preliminary stages of what we're calling phase 2 of the Commission's interconnection process. And many of you were part of the stakeholder technical advisory process for phase 1, which is currently under consideration at the Public Regulation Commission. In fact, yesterday we received the initial comments on the report and the draft rule that was promulgated in December. And so there's a formal process that's going to go for adopting the rule. And I'll just let you know that as a result of a filing from El Paso Electric earlier this month, requesting an amendment to the schedule, the Commission has taken in some comments on that request and is going to issue a revised order next Wednesday on the 16th. And I can't tell you exactly what the order says, but it's going to provide people more opportunity to comment on the draft rule and the issues that are the technical issues that were not completely resolved in phase 1. And so it's going to extend the formal proceeding by about 6 weeks. And we would hope to have a final rule in place in May. But definitely keep your eyes open for the order on the 16th. If you're on the service list from the first phase, you'll definitely get it. And we'll make sure that everybody who's attending this meeting is added to the service list of one kind or another. Okay. Many of you know Margie Tatro, who is our support system, and she's going to help me keep organized here today. Our main business in this phase will be to identify and kind of nail down the settings and technical specs that are necessary in order to accommodate one of the outcomes of phase 1, which was the recommendation to the Commission that at beginning December 31st of this year, that all new inverters and other devices attached to the utility distribution system should fall under IEEE 1547-2018. In particular, inverters should be capable of actively regulating voltage, should be capable of frequency response, should be have ride-through capabilities for abnormal voltage and frequency, and may provide inertial response. So that's the outlines of the task that we have before us. I'm pleased to see that many of the people who have been active in doing similar kinds of technical determinations in other jurisdictions are with us today. And we're going to go through the list and have everybody introduce themselves, but that's generally what we have. We also have with us Matthew Tisdale, who runs the GridWorks organization, and GridWorks provided facilitation support for our phase 1, Eric Martineau, and we are anticipating that GridWorks will also have identify a facilitator to help us in phase 2. And that's why Matthew's here, is to listen to exactly what we're going to be talking about, what we hope to kind of establish a time frame for getting stuff done, and any other issues that need to come up within this phase so that he can better identify the person to help us, right? And we had invited Commissioner Hall to join us. I don't see her on the call. Commissioner Hall, are you with us? No. Okay. Margie, do you have any other administrative stuff?
No, I think I'm good. I'll jump in as we go through this. Thanks, Arthur.
Okay. I have a list of people who we had invited and who had RSVP'd, and there's of course more people on the phone. So I'm going to go through the list, and then if I didn't call your name, just kind of like raise your hand and then introduce yourself. So what I'm just going to ask people to do is to identify that they're here, because we have some people on the phone. I can't tell who they are. Who you represent, and if you have worked on this issue in other jurisdictions, right? And I'm thinking, you know, California, of course, has been doing this for a number of years, Hawaii, Minnesota, Colorado, et al. So that we get a sense of kind of like the range of familiarity with the issues, and that will help us sort out subgroups if necessary to start kind of working on the issues. So with that, is Abbas Akil with us today? No. Adam Alvarez, PNM.
Yes, I'm here.
And what do you do? What is your real name, and what do you really do?
Lately been I don't know, interconnection workshops for the last year. I'm Adam Alvarez. I'm a senior project manager in PNM's regulatory department.
Okay, great. Bora Akyol with Trimark.
Good morning, Arthur and Margie. My name is Bora Akyol, real name. And I am the Chief Technology Officer for Trimark. Trimark is one of the largest SCADA controls metering companies in the United States. And I have been working within California as well as Texas and other jurisdictions on both smart inverters as well as integration of PV plus storage or wind plus storage with the standard called MESA DER. Which is an open standard for control of assets that combine two types of resources, if you will.
Great, thanks for
I'm happy
joining
to
us,
be
Bora.
here.
Yeah, appreciate it. And is that the Gulf of Mexico behind you?
Actually, it is Long Beach Harbor. And where my head is right behind me is the cruise ship Queen Mary, I think, or Queen Elizabeth.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, Brad Havener with California Solar and Storage Association with us, Brad? Not yet. Okay, Brian Liddick of Interstate Renewable Energy Council.
Hi, I'm Chief Regulatory Engineer at IREC. I was deeply involved in Minnesota's adoption efforts for 1547 in the working and writing group effort there, and then been involved for a long time in California in Hawaii's smart inverter efforts. I facilitated as a consultant for HECO to lead their 1547-2018 adoption efforts a couple years ago, and have been involved elsewhere a little bit. I'm currently involved in DC, and in Maryland a little bit as well.
Terrific. Thank you very much for joining us. Christian Ader with Fronius.
Yeah, I'm a codes and standards engineer for Fronius, and I was involved in California and Hawaii.
Okay, Hawaii. See, everybody, if they were in California, they went to Hawaii, I think mostly just for a vacation. Is John Berdner from Enphase with us? Not yet. Okay. John Hawkins, PNM.
Yeah, John Hawkins. I'm the Associate Director of Innovation and Communications here at PNM. I've actually been kind of working on advanced inverters or smart inverters for many, many years. Some of the actual initial stuff came out of projects that we were working on here in New Mexico with EPRI. Worked a little bit with California when they were starting to, when the WEIL leaders group was trying to petition for the use of smart inverters in California, and I was part of that working group, and have just worked with EPRI on those types of issues over the years.
Terrific. Thank you, John, for joining us. Michael Ropp, Sandia National Laboratories. And Michael would tell you that Sandia had been working on this since the 1980s, as he gave a presentation to us earlier. Other IREC representatives, Midhat Mafazi.
Hey, good morning. Midad Mafazi here with IREC. I work alongside Brian Leidick. He just spoke a few minutes ago. I've been with IREC for almost a year now. Before that, I used to work for utility in Illinois as a DR integration engineer. So pretty much handling interconnections, doing power flow and studies and whatnot. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And it's Midhat. I want to make sure I pronounce it right.
Midhat.
Midhat. Okay. Radina Valova, also from Iraq. Oh. Okay. Roberto Favela from El Paso will join us in a little bit, but he's not here yet. Sarah Wallinga from Tesla.
I'm fucking hurting.
Art, this is Roberto.
Oh, this Roberto.
I am here.
Roberto.
Just happened to end up early. Yeah, Roberto Favela, manager of interconnections for large interconnections and El Paso Electric, involved in a few standards, 1547 for a while, and then I'm rejoining in on P2800, and also working on other NERC and California works. So just representing El Paso Electric here.
Great, thanks for joining us, Roberto. Sarah Wallinga, Tesla. Not here currently. Satish Ranad with NMSU. Nope. Scott Risley with Nautilus Solar. Nope. We invited Sky. I don't see Sky Stanfield, who represents IREC, but we got plenty of IREC representation. Okay, Stephen Wormlinger, SMA America.
Yeah, Steve Wormlinger. I work for SMA and I get involved in pretty much all the US codes and standards related to utility interconnection, product safety, and other installation codes. I've been involved with the Smart Inverter Working Group for a number of years in California, get involved in various meetings there. I've been involved in, invited to some of the New York conversations on the same topic, as well as ISO New England and Illinois, and a few others, and also worked with Hawaii, over their years of implementing some of these requirements.
Great, Stephen, thank you for joining us. Another Stephen Rimshaw from Sunrun. I know that he is in Hawaii, and so whenever we schedule these things, it's inconvenient for him. Nope. Okay, Tayoko Sedgwick, Positive Energy. Is Tayoko with us? Nope. Tom Key from EPRI. Nope. Travis Dorr, SPS Excel.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Travis Dorr from Excel Energy. I work on the DER integration team there. My experience with implementation of this standard includes, I assumed a leadership role for the subgroup for the New Mexico PRC last year for the functions that you mentioned earlier, Art. And then since then, I've been working heavily in Minnesota and Colorado on the IEEE 1547 2000 implementation in those states as well.
Great, Travis. Thank you. We're glad that you could join us. I see a couple of names
Art,
have just shown up. Yeah, who's this?
Art. Hey,
Yeah.
This is Stephen Rimshaw with Sunrun. I was on mute earlier, I think. I'm on for a little bit here. My involvement with smart inverters started with Hawaiian Electric, and then I've been working across the country in a few different markets on the implementation. Primarily the biggest opportunity has been in Hawaii at how we've been using these functions, where I work with various coalitions here and we advocate as the DER parties, and we've, really changed interconnection. We have incredible deferral of service upgrades happening here. We have proactive utility processes that have spawned out of the use of these capabilities. And we've gone from being at odds at how to use these functions to coming together, stipulating with the consumer advocate the HECO companies, all DER parties, on an approach to leverage these capabilities, ensure consumer protection, and do some really great things. So we've had amazing accomplishments here in the islands, and I hope other regions can be as successful as our rollout here.
Great, Steve. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. I see that Abbas Akil has joined.
Good morning, Art, and good morning, Margie. Thank you for allowing me to join this conversation. My experience also goes into a Sandia initiative, which was called CGIS, which stood for Solar Energy Grid Integration Systems Program, which at that time recommended a lot of these changes that we are seeing in inverters and improvements in inverter performance and reliability. So thank you very much for allowing me to join. Also want to thank the Commission for taking this initiative. And of course, this ties very closely in the following workshops that will happen in the next few weeks for grid modernization. Thank you.
Great, Abbas. Thank you. Andrea Contreras is on the participants list.
Good morning, Art. Yes, I'm here, manager with P&M Interconnection Department. Don't have much experience, so here to listen and learn. Thank you.
They still make you climb poles. I mean, I like your avatar, but it seems to me that you're beyond that.
I can only get about 2 feet off the ground, so they don't make me climb much further.
Anthony Bueno.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Anthony Bueno, Director of Customer Solutions and Operations here at P&M. Looking forward to participating in this workshop and getting educated as well. Thanks for having us.
Okay. Charlotte Otero Goodwin.
Good morning. My name is Charlotte Otero Goodwin, and I work in P&M's Distribution Planning Department. I perform some of the interconnection studies, and I'm also here to learn more about smart inverters and their capabilities.
Okay. Deborah Terliger.
Hi, this is Debria Terwilliger, site counsel for P&M. I do have some experience when I worked with Nevada PUC on smart inverter integration into their interconnection process. But I'm here on behalf of P&M primarily to listen and understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank Andazola. You want to say hi, Frank? No, he doesn't. Okay. Jackie Salazar.
Hi, Jacqueline Salazar with P&M Solar Interconnection Department. Just here to gain some knowledge as well.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie. Leon Viveros, also P&M.
Hi there. My name is Leon. I work at P&M as an interconnection engineer. Thank you. Glad to join.
Okay, we got a pretty heavy contingent from P&M. Appreciate that. Okay, I think that is everybody that I'm seeing on my list. Oh, Ryan, also P&M. Ryan Says Buchanan.
Hello, good morning. Ryan Size Buchanan. I'm the engineering supervisor for the renewables team. I am new to the team, so I'm just here to learn and listen to the conversations. Thank you.
Okay, great, Ryan. I have a telephone number. Yeah.
I see Philip Metzger also. Maybe he wants to introduce himself.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Philip Metzger. I'm also here at P&M in the regulatory department. This is my first week here in New Mexico, so I'm just listening and learning.
Where'd you come from?
I came from the Arizona Corporation Commission. So.
Oh, well, it's a little bit more stable here, just a little bit. We understand. Okay. Yeah, I have a phone number 505-259-5243. Can you identify yourself, please? No, in listen only mode. Okay, anybody that I haven't called on that I'm not seeing on my list?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes. Go ahead.
I'm the call-in user. I was double muted there. My name is Ron Peterson. I'm also from PNM in the System Protection Department. And in a textbook or in a technical paper, when you see the phrase, it's obvious to a casual observer, I'm the casual observer.
Okay.
I think PNM has initiated a policy where our bonuses and raises are gauged by the amount of time we spend on Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
So that's why there's so many PNM people participating. Thanks for your help.
Well, you know, I used to work in California, and if you had a telephone call with Southern California Electric, you expected about 20 people, right, on the call. I mean, there's just their way of doing things. The only other person that we haven't introduced is Colin Gillespie, and Colin is the administrative assistant for Commissioner Hall. You want to say anything, Colin?
Thanks, Art. No, I'm just here in the commissioner's stead to observe and fill her in. She got booked in some meetings at the last minute, but I was a part of phase 1, and I really appreciate all of your hard work and Margie's hard work and everyone's participation in this next phase. Thank you.
Great. This is going to be fairly informal. I mean, really, we just want to begin the conversation and to try and identify what exactly we have to do, how we're setting up for future phases of this. And, you know, I'll just say that in the conversation that we've had and based on experience in other states, there's really kind of 3 paths that you take to really optimize this. And one is the identifying and establishing the use of the autonomous functions. And as I mentioned, these are the ride-throughs and the inertial support and that, and getting that together. And then once you have that in place in terms of what the equipment can do, we have to decide what the equipment should do, right? And that really requires input from both the industry and the utility to make sure that the functionalities are there when are needed, and that there is a sense of how they can contribute to the system. As Steve Rimshaw pointed out, there are a lot of benefits from having the advanced inverter functionalities. And as you go down the line, the next important steps are the communication protocols. And I'm sure that we're aware that that gets a little bit more technical. And then an important but sticky issue of control, right? In some jurisdictions where the use of inverters has also allowed the use of aggregation of distributed energy resources behind the meter into something that the utility can use as a resource, or that can bid into organized markets like an ISO or an RTO. Those control and communication functions are really critical. I'm not sure that we're going to resolve them in this portion of what we're looking at. What we're trying to do is to establish the foundation such that we can meet this expected guideline. So one of the outcomes here will be a roadmap, right? What do we have to do? When do we have to do it? When would be best to do it? So I want everybody to be thinking about that. Anybody kind of just want to raise any basic issues? We do have a mix of skill, experience, and people that are really just learning about this because it hasn't been in use in New Mexico. So if you can just use your reactions function and raise your hand so that I can see who's interested in speaking and try and call on you in order. And Margie's also going to watch so that we can do this. Okay, I see Travis and then I see Bora. And Travis, as he identified, really was the subgroup leader on the first phase. And I'm pleased to say that this was one of the least contentious issues that we dealt with in the first phase of the proceeding, because everybody saw the need for this to happen. So Travis, what's on your mind?
Yeah, thanks, Art. I think that's a pretty good plan that you set up here where, what are the next steps? I think the next steps include, the settings, right, for all those various functions that we required implementation of by the end of this year. And then next would be, right, communication, maybe not resolve the control functions issues, like you said, anytime soon, but at least a roadmap, a timeline, et cetera, would be good. Seems like the low-hanging fruit when it comes to determining the settings would be the write-through function. So that seems to be a good starting point. There's that function that we require. This is shall write through abnormal voltage / frequency. So I think that's a good starting point for discussion. And yeah, just wanted to say thanks.
Great. Bora?
Good morning again, everybody. I wanted to, yesterday I was in a call with the California CPUC Smart Inverter Operationalization Working Group, and I wanted to bring this topic here and I apologize, I wasn't part of phase 1, so hopefully I'm not repeating something that's been already discussed. When it comes to emergency write-throughs, it's definitely an inverter setting, and that's something that is low-hanging fruit, like Travis mentioned. However, I do want to point out that this notion that we're going to load a lot of advanced control functions, like scheduled power reductions, etc., into the inverter, I think is basically loading up a piece of hardware with functionality that can exist elsewhere in the system. The best example I can give to you is if you have both solar and energy storage in the residence or in the business, and they are AC coupled, there are 2 inverters involved. Write-throughs obviously apply to both inverters, but really there's another device that sits in the middle. Some vendors call it the energy gateway, some vendors call it the power plant controller, and there's a lot of communication, control, etc. functions that exist in that device. And I wanted to bring it up to the attention of this advanced group of people, because I feel like there's loading all this functionality to the inverters is essentially maybe injustice to the inverter manufacturers, especially given the rate at which they update their firmware or not. It's fundamentally a challenge there. So we need to, I think, as we go through these settings, need to have a comprehensive architectural view of what functionality belongs in what device or what block, so that 20 years from now, we can basically say, oh yeah, we did put the functionality in the right place. And that's my comment today. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that's a good comment, but let me ask you this, in the areas that we've identified for pretty much immediate action, right? Regulating voltage, frequency response, ride-throughs for frequency and voltage, inertial response. I get the sense that what you're talking about is a little bit more advanced than that, but something to keep in mind as we move forward. Is that correct?
Yes, it is, but it also pertains to, like, in a way, an inverter, you can communicate a real and reactive power command to the inverter, and it will basically generate those. For example, if you are doing volt var, right, and there's a curve, and you want to change that curve, that's where I think some of the functions that I mentioned come into play. But I agree with you, that's probably maybe phase 3. I thought I would just throw it out here so that as we address these, we can kind of keep that in mind. And I highly recommend, for those of you that have not seen the MESA DER specification, which is also IEC 61850-7-420 and the DMP3-AN 2019, I believe. It exists in 2 different standards bodies. I would highly recommend taking a look at that, where Francis Cleveland has done it with the team, has done an amazing job in outlining the roles and responsibilities of different pieces of hardware.
Okay, Bora, can you do me a favor? Nobody's going to remember those
I'll send you an email.
Can you put them in the chat if you have them there?
Okay, yeah, I can put it in the chat, and we'll see if we can get you also a PDF copy for use within this forum.
Yeah, that would be good. My next issue is going to be resources.
Yeah.
Steve
Thank you.
Wormlinger.
Sorry, I had to fumble for the mute button.
That's right.
Yeah, Art, could you, for those of us that are just joining for the first time, maybe do a quick overview? I know you touched on it a little bit, but what exactly is phase one? And what is the date for that fixed, or is it being decided? And then
Okay.
what do we need to do? Are we finishing some stuff with phase one, or is phase one already done?
Okay, so phase one was really about updating the interconnection rule and the existing manual, which was last put into place in 2008, right? And as you can imagine, a lot has changed since 2008, including several updates to the federal small generator interconnection protocol that our rule was based on, right? But our rule doesn't reflect those changes, but also the introduction of issues that really are very state level oriented, whereas my assessment of SGIP is that even though it was for small devices, less than 10 megawatt, interconnecting to the utility system, a lot of it had to do with connections at the transmission level or sub-transmission level. And so we're trying to craft a change to the rule and technical specifics for screening processes, for kind of formalizing a fast track review process for smaller entities, rooftop solar, for instance. And so that was the bulk of the work. In the conversations that we had in phase one, we also moved into things like how to deal with export functionalities if there are storage systems associated with the PVs, right? And I can direct you, in fact, I'll make sure that the phase one report is part of our file of resources so you can refer to it. But this advanced inverter portion of it was just like one small part of that conversation. And as I indicated, we dealt with it pretty quickly, right? Because there was general unanimity on what needed to be done, okay? And I appreciate Travis Dorr in particular for bringing his expertise working in other jurisdictions to help organize that. With regard to phase one, as I said, the commission has revisited the schedule for adopting this. I anticipate that phase one will be adopted as a rule change by mid-May. That's what we're looking at, if not June. But that really doesn't affect what we're doing here. We can proceed on this because I don't even know that what we come up with here has to go into a rule so much as a general adoption of standards, right? And kind of among the issues that we need to figure out is there going to be one set of settings, right, for everybody in the state, or are there differences in utility territories just by the nature of their network that requires some differences among them? So those are the kinds of things that I anticipate we'll end up talking.
Okay, so you say it goes into revisiting the date and looking at May, June, that's of this year, right?
Yes, yeah, that's for phase one.
Phase one, and
yeah, this work I would hope that we complete certainly in time for December 31st. Right? But that was going to be my first question to everybody, which is that still a viable date, right? Can we anticipate having a requirement that all new inverters that are attached to the system as of December 31st of this year have these functionalities embedded into them, whether they're activated or not, right? So I'm going to hold that question, but that's one of the fundamental things that I need to answer today.
Okay, so they're publishing the updated phase one, but you're looking at December 31st right now as the deadline date of when equipment needs to comply.
Yeah, and I think that, well, maybe Travis can answer, but I think that was considered very doable, particularly in light of the fact that, for instance, Hawaii has required this since 2017. California has required it since about then, I think 2018 or 2019, that all around the country. And what we've heard from the inverter manufacturers is that, yeah, anything that we put in is already going to have these functions there. It's just a matter of having them activated.
Yeah, it's just a matter of, so you're correct. Everything that we have on the market now is 1741 SA certified, using, 1741 doesn't define the requirements. Those are usually what we call source requirements documents that come from California Rule 21 or HECO SRD or other utility specified requirements. And then we certify to 1741 SA, and anything that has SA will have all these functions. The problem is now updating that certification to the new 1547 2018, which also has these functions, but entirely different test procedures. So, what's on the market now that has SA certification will do what you're asking. It's just if you're saying it has to be certified to 1741 SB, that might be difficult by December 31st. California is looking at March 22nd. So it would be nice if we could align that.
Yes, yeah, no, I understood that there was some delay in the UL process, and we can address that. So anyway, we'll come back to that. Christian?
Okay. Yeah, Arthur, I'm sorry, this is Brian with IREC. I don't seem to have a hand. I tried to wave my hand, but it went away. So I'm not sure
Okay,
why I don't have a raise hand feature like I normally do. But yeah, just wanted to build on to Steve's point there. Basically, what I see in the ruling text for phase one that you sent out, it does refer to 1547-2018 requirements, which would be the new certification, but is pretty, and I think you'll see in IREC's comments, we think it's pretty loose language, doesn't really give guidance in terms of, especially to manufacturers or developers, what actual equipment they would need in the future. So it sounds like that's, and that includes the requirement, the ride-through requirements, as well as the normal operating performance requirements. They don't seem to be resolved in phase one. And so it sounds like it's not just the settings that we're looking for, but also the capabilities in terms of those, the performance categories that we would also need to be deciding in this phase two. Is that a correct statement?
Well, you tell me. All right, if that's what we need to do, then that's going to go on the list of something that we need to do.
Yeah, if it's not resolved in phase one, in which I think it deserves to be in a rule somewhere, but it should be, and if there's limited time to resolve that issue in phase one, then it seems as though that would be one of the probably first items on the list to select the categories.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to inform me by what exactly do you mean by this, and what do you think we'll need to do? So you have some homework for the next time we meet, which is to make a presentation on what you think the priorities are along those lines.
Okay, certainly.
Great.
Yeah,
All right,
and,
sorry. Go ahead, Mahat.
And just to complement what Brian has said, I think the comments are either due today or yesterday, but if you take a look at what IREC filed, has a lot of what Brian just mentioned, and it details some of the gaps that we thought need to be finished as part of the phase one.
Yeah, it's really difficult to introduce highly technical things at this point of the game for phase one, but we'll certainly take a look at that and see what's capable. I want to get back to Christian and Steve. You still have your hand raised.
Sorry,
I'll come back to you if you still have something else to say.
I'm going to take it off.
Okay, great. Christian.
Okay, I would more or less agree with Steve that the required function, what you submitted, more or less already covered by supplement SE. And for me, one of the most important points, what also Steve mentioned, is the date. So to comply with IEEE 1547 2018, it's not that UL 7041 SB edition 3 is slow. This UL 7041 supplement only tries align the dates per certification according to IEEE 1547/2018 and UL 7041 SB edition 3 should be aligned with other states like California.
And somebody said it was into 2023, early 2023. Is that?
March 28, 2023 is what California will most likely propose.
Okay. Any other conversation on this point? You know, I mean, if we're going to defer the dates, right, for new installations, then that would be a really good thing to get out of the way now, so that we can make sure that that gets changed in the rule proposal. So, anybody else want to weigh in on that? I think I'll ask Travis, since you helped us so much with the first step. All right, let me put it this way. Is the December 31st, 2022 date still a viable date, or should we seriously consider extending it into March 2023 to align with California and hopefully the finalization of the test certification issue?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Am I able to share my screen?
Margie, can you make sure that Travis can share?
Yes, you should be able to share, Travis. Try now.
Okay. I just shared a link for what I'm showing on my screen right now in the chat.
Okay, we're not seeing. Oh, okay, we see the link.
Yeah,
but
I'd take a sec. Everybody able to see the timeline provided by IEEE? So this is a question I wanted to ask the subgroup. Just wanted to get some feedback on this timeline that was provided by IEEE. Just want to make sure this is an accurate representation of reality.
Okay, I'm not seeing anything.
Oh, okay. I will try again. It seemed like it was working. Oh, okay. There we go.
There you go.
Oh, thanks, Travis. Yep, we see it now.
Okay, can you make it a little bit bigger?
Yes. Thank you. There we go.
There we go.
Something like that. All right.
Yeah.
All right. It's still showing, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I use Microsoft Teams all the time, and I'm still kind of a noob with Zoom. So yeah, just wanted to, get some feedback, take some time, maybe after this, or if you already have feedback ready for the group, please feel free to share it now. On this timeline that was presented by IEEE, I shared the link in the chat. I just wanted to focus maybe on, I think it's note 3, right? Because we're operating now in this part of the timeline, and this was shared less than a year ago by EPRI, that the products to the market not generally available until 18 months after release of these standards, right? Because these need to be certified. These inverters need to be certified. That was kind of the hang up, right? We get the IEEE 1547/2018 published in 2018, but how do we certify the inverters to that standard, right? And how many delays did we have in that? I know a few people on this call are intimately involved and aware of the delays of the certification standard. So does this still sound like an accurate timeline to the subgroup, or is there something that they're missing here? Is there something wrong in this timeline?
Yeah, this is Steve Wormlinger. Yeah. That's in desperate need of revision. And we talked to EPRI. So this information originally came from EPRI, and then it was linked in the IEEE. And at the time this was done, we had a version of SB published right after the 1547.1 was published. And SB needed to be updated in order to include 1547 in the certification process. So 1741 has to point to these IEEE standards and say, use these for the source requirements in 1547 and for the test procedures in 1547.1. as we all started to set up our testing, we found some really substantial issues in the wording of the test procedure that would create inconsistencies in how it was applied by different NRTLs. So we spent about a year and updated SB. So now any product you get that's certified SB should be to the 3rd edition of 1741 SB. And that was published in September 28th, I believe, of 2021. So we're looking at 18 months from that date. And this hasn't reflected the last revision or publication of 1741 3rd edition SB.
And just maybe to add, the 2nd edition of Supplement SB was around 3 pages. The 3rd edition, with correcting all of these issues, blow up to 30 pages. And March 28, 2023 would more or less align with 18 months after publication of the final Supplement SB 3rd edition.
Okay, all right. So it sounds like there should be a proposal on the table to, at least as a first step, for the commission to take note that there are understandable delays in finalizing all the requirements, and that it would be better to change the date that will be put into our rule from December 31st, 2022 to at least March 28th, 2023. Is anybody going to argue for having it later than that?
Arthur, this is Brian with IREC. 18 months seems to align. IREC gathered a bunch of data from manufacturers and NERDLs just to try and get a handle on how long the certification effort would actually take. And about 18 months seems to align with having approximately 80% of the market covered with certified products. So we expect them to start rolling out, right now, but we won't have the vast majority of them until approximately 18 months, depending on how things go. There's a lot of fudge factors in there. So we are recommending 18 months, which aligns with typical practice anyways. But
I'd like to hear from developers, people who are putting solar systems in currently. I see that Tayoko has joined us, and Positive Energy certainly is one of the active installers, developers in North New Mexico. What are you doing now? I mean, you're putting in inverters. What are those inverters capable of, and how are you setting up for this expected change? Tayoko?
Good morning, Arthur. Thanks. We're installing inverters that are delivered to us from the manufacturers with the standard requirements that are required in New Mexico. And so the question of well, what are they capable of? I think that's been addressed. They're capable of 1741 SA now, and the big concern that we have is that the higher penetration levels in community solar coming online, that there's going to be a much greater need for some of the basic functions of, I think, 1741 SA that already operate today, voltage, regulation and so on. And so I believe in the original working group that we talked about that being the first step to set standards for some of the basic functions that are already available today in the inverters. We did have a serious problem with one of our installations, and we did do some work on that particular site with the approval of the utility to stabilize some of the things that were happening at the end of this line. So right now, any changes that would be made outside of the normal inverter function aren't being done that I'm aware of. So,
Christian, you raised your hand.
Yeah, and I just can speak for us, but more or less, I repeat what I said before. All these free functions, I think, or requirements, what you mentioned in your email, we would already fulfill with our inverters, but these functions are not certified according the new IEEE 1547 2018 or the new supplement B, but the same functions would be included already in supplement SA, where I'm pretty sure that 100% of the manufacturers provide these functions already.
Okay, all right. I'll get to you in a minute, Steve. I think that we can reach a kind of a general agreement that the commission should take this under consideration, and certainly if you're involved in the proceeding, right? We have a set of kind of milestones coming up. We got our initial comments yesterday. What you're going to see out of the meeting next week, the commission's business meeting, is a revised schedule for providing comments on a revised draft rule. So that revised draft rule, since I'm writing it, is going to change the date from December 31st, 2022 to March 28th, 2023 for the requirement of installation, right? Because we understand that if you were to put this equipment in today, it would have the same functionalities, they're just not certified. That's what I'm getting from this conversation. But those of you who are involved in the proceeding or wish to make comments in the proceeding, there will be opportunities to provide comments on the revised rule, response comments, reply comments, hearing that will take us into May. Certainly this is not the most important issue that we're going to be dealing with in phase one decision, but I think that it's one that we can probably find some level of consensus on. Steve?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're not certified, or they are. Those functions are certified to a different version,
to an earlier standard.
Yeah,
right.
as SA requirements, and they were based on what California Rule 21 implemented as phase one, phase two
right.
Functions. So right. They will work. So you could really, and I think what we did in ISO New England was the way they worded this years ago. They said SA certification, and then SB, or they didn't know SB was going to be available then. So they said 2018, IEEE 1547, 2018, when available. And then they listed their functions and the parameters and settings that were important to them, mainly ride through, maybe volt var. Okay. So they detailed those out and said, okay, as long as you can set these, you need at least SA certification. But when 1547 2018 becomes available, equipment should be updated to that.
Right. Okay. Well, is that a firmware change? Is that something that can be changed over the internet?
Well, I can't say for every manufacturer. I know most of our products, it's just a tweaking. Well, not more of a tweaking in some cases, but yes, mainly firmware. I can't say that some older inverters maybe has some hardware adjustments they have to make. But anything that meets SA probably was just a firmware change to meet the SB, but it's a whole different set of test procedures.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's
well, what we want to do is avoid inconvenience at the market level, at the people who've got inverters installed for their rooftop solar, that they don't have to keep going back and actually physically changing something. So that's really what I'm trying to avoid. I know certification is really at the manufacturing level, and so that the equipment as it gets installed meets the standard. We don't want to have this kind of retroactive back and forth, because that is a market inhibitor. So I'll take suggestions as to how to address that, but that would be my recommendation right now. Brian had his hand up, and then I'd like to kind of close this conversation out and we'll move on.
Yeah, thanks. I think the conversation points to the need not only to just have an end date for the transition, but also a starting date of a transitional period where potentially, basically any certification or either certification could be utilized, and then maybe have optionality to actually utilize those certified features. And it seems like though today that could also be done optionally through the use of SA certified functions with mutual agreement at the utility. And so I'm not sure though that if we don't do the full phase 2 process first, that the utilities will be interested in trying to implement those functions, in the near term. But whatever types of implementation issues there are on the utilities end, and whether there are equipment lists or whatnot that need to be updated, we need to keep that in mind in terms of like how soon could you actually start submitting products that have an SB certification, and if you do that, could you actually utilize those new functionalities?
Okay, this becomes an important issue to kind of draft for the commission, so the commission understands what will need to be done in the future in real layman's language, right? So that I'm putting that on our agenda of work to be done in this process, right? It's not going to happen overnight, but that, and I just want to remind everybody that, like in California, even though we're putting in this requirement as of a date, right? Whether it's December, whether it's March, it doesn't mean that you have to go and change the equipment that's already installed, right? We're essentially would be requiring that existing equipment is grandfathered in until such time as it runs at the end of its life, or the end user wants to make the upgrade, and so that any changes that happen are done on a pretty much a rolling basis. Now, the scale in New Mexico is far less than California or even Hawaii. I mean, I think that the last inventory of installed rooftop solar systems that we had was somewhere in the order of about 26,000 for PNM territory, adding about 6,000 to 8,000 a year, and much less in the other two districts, SPS and El Paso Electric. So it's not like there's a huge amount of change that has to happen immediately, but we are anticipating that as time goes on, and the statistics are bearing this out, is that each year the utilities get more and more interconnection requests for rooftop solar, and we are going to have an influx of larger projects that require these functionalities through the community solar program. So the commission's biggest interest is to align all these things so that we don't have hiccups, so that people aren't prevented from coming to market because we have to wait for something, or the equipment isn't available, or it's not ready for prime time, that kind of thing. So I'm asking your involvement here is to help us coordinate this, because we know it has to happen. We want it to happen in the most efficient and streamlined way possible, but we're not going to push the river, right? We really want this to work. So, I'll take, any kind of recommendations, suggestions coming out of this group that can help make that work. That make sense to everybody? Great. It's 11 o'clock. I really only anticipated going for about another half hour. So what I'd like to do is to just have a conversation about what else do we have to do immediately, okay? We have set up a OneDrive folder for documents, and we'll take your suggestions for other relevant materials to add. We do have a link here so you can look at it, and largely these are, there were some EEI documents, some EPRI documents, some NREL reports. I tried to have the more current ones rather than the historic ones, because certainly this issue goes back now 10 years. I mean, when I was at the California Public Utilities Commission, it was 2012, that we were dealing with these issues, right? And they're still dealing with them. So I wanted to get the most. So we take recommendations for the most relevant and useful, and need to talk about what our cadence for meeting ought to be. In phase one, because we had so many issues, we really met on an every other week basis. I'm not feeling that we need to do that, but I do not want to lose momentum. So I'll take a conversation about kind of what we need to do, how often we need to meet to do that, what the process ought to be, whether we should have smaller groups out of this larger group of 25 people working on specific issues to come back to bring to the larger group. That's the process that seemed to have worked best in the previous. So if I can get some sense now of what else is an immediate task, how can we address that task, and who's going to volunteer to help us do that? Okay, I've already given IREC some homework because they've already been working on that issue. So anybody have any ideas?
All right, this is Brian again, at risk of speaking up again, but I do think what I didn't hear if we actually had representation from the transmission side of PNM here, and I don't know to what regards the Southwest Power Pool plays a role in New Mexico, so I'm just not familiar with the transmission territory, but the transmission provider definitely needs to be involved in the scoping of the abnormal performance category, which I think we can probably get easy agreement on in terms of what inverters need to do. You know, maybe we don't know as much about what the rotating machines need to do, but that a lot of that is typically guided by the ISOs and RTOs.
Okay, I'll just point out that really kind of the commission's jurisdiction is over distribution level connections, right? We're not here to address FERC issues. That the interconnection rule is up to 10 megawatts of device of generation attached to the utility system. In the past, largely, we've been talking about behind the meter installations, but increasingly because of community solar projects, which are going to be sized up to 5 megawatts, there's going to be feeder connections. Why do we need transmission involvement? And Travis from SPS is part of the Southwest Power Pool, might be able to address your issue.
Yeah, so the abnormal performance category relates to bulk system reliability, and IEEE 1547 actually states that the authority governing interconnection requirements, which is typically seen as the commission, should consult with the regional reliability coordinator in order to determine those settings. And in other jurisdictions, you know, PJM or ISO-NE, MISO have coordinated with the public utility commissions or produced guides that would help the public utility commissions and distribution utilities select the correct requirements and settings.
Okay, Travis just put something in chat about a default setting, and then we'll hear from Roberto.
Yeah. Did you want me to go?
Yeah, Travis first, and then Roberto.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Travis.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I totally agree with Brian. He's spot on. We do need to involve transmission at least in some part, whether they're in this subgroup or we take homework back with us to work with our transmission folk for the reasons that Brian just spoke of. And I think Roberto is probably going to speak on that as well.
Okay, Roberto.
Yeah, I just want to say that, yeah, I mean, for EP, I'll be representing the transmission side, but just to note here, for New Mexico utilities, at least for us, EPE, we're vertically integrated. So I mean, we do have the decision making here. We're not part of any ISO or RTO, but yeah. So, but we do need to be involved in making sure that everything is in alignment with the NERC standards that will be implemented.
Okay, so it's really, you know, I perceive this kind of bulk system as kind of a context within which we play, but the commission doesn't really have jurisdiction over that stuff, but we have to make sure that we're not contradicting or out of sync with it. So I'll leave it to you guys to help me figure out how to do that. Travis?
I was just giving a thumbs up. No, you're right.
Okay.
That was well said. And yeah, just to comment on what I provided in the chat there, it's not related to the transmission thing, so I don't mean to be changing the topic or anything like that. It was just for the group's consideration.
Okay.
Thank
and
you.
Christian.
You just mentioned before that there will be a weekly or bi-weekly meeting.
We haven't decided that yet. We haven't decided. It won't be weekly because I've got this same time period. Just you might be interested and take this back to your company. The commission is also initiating a rulemaking on grid modernization, and for the next 12 weeks, beginning next week, Thursday, the 17th. We're having a series of webinars about grid modernization issues to help inform the commission, to help inform the community here, leading to what will be a notice of proposed rulemaking later this year on how to address grid modernization applications from the utility, how to pay for them, what they should be, what the criteria are for judging the public benefit of those recommendations, and that all comes from. So if you're interested in that, you can go on the commission's website and there's a notice about the beginning of the webinar series, or you can send us an email and we'll make sure that you can attend at least the first session and get a sense of what it's about. With regard to this, I don't see a need for every other week, right? I wouldn't want it less than every month, right? Because I think that the issues that we're dealing with are fairly definable and workable. And you know, what that means is that we would hope that you guys can organize yourselves into groups that meet offline and then bring proposals or education back to us, right? And that seems to have worked in other places. Matt Tisdale is kind of like one of the gurus of stakeholder process and getting involved in, and GridWorks has been involved in California and other jurisdictions. Matthew, do you have any sense of how you would like to see the cadence of this group based on the conversation that you've heard?
Well, thanks, Art. I think guru is overly generous description here, but I would say based on my experience, you know, the group maybe has a choice to make whether or not it wants to you know, get this done as fast as possible and do like a quick push, kind of an intensive effort, or whether it's more helpful and productive to have something that moves at more of a leisurely is not quite the right word, but a more measured pace. And if the group, you know, opts for one or the other, we can facilitate accordingly. But it really depends on how you all want to get your work done, whether it's easier for you to digest it all real fast, or what are you going to need time between conversations to coordinate with one another and with your companies to build the material.
Okay.
So Arthur,
yeah, I'm not quite sure that we can decide that. Marchie?
Yeah, Arthur, Travis actually has a suggestion for a starting point for a subgroup. Travis, now might be a good time to propose that and see what kind of enthusiasm or support there would be for that as a first step. Pace is a second question, but Travis, do you want to describe your proposal?
Sorry, my proposal for what exactly?
A starting point for a subgroup.
Okay. Yeah, the starting point would be just working more on those autonomous functions. You know, I think we've already made a lot of good progress on what I was wondering for a timeline, right? Is December still good? But it seems like March. And so a good starting point is, I think Steve already mentioned to me the timeline. Yeah, so just working more on the timeline, right, and a roadmap, right, and just kind of establishing a good base to work off of, and then I think one of the first things we want to include in that timeline is just nailing down the autonomous function, the autonomous functions that should be by default activation, enabled or disabled, and then discussion of the settings and the categories.
Okay. It sounds like there's going to need to be a little bit of education for some members of the group. I mean, we do have a variety of experience on that. Would people be okay with meeting in 2 weeks, right? To really kind of get that started. I really just wanted this to be an organizational meeting, but it sounds to me like there are things that we really kind of like need to start with. And one of them is understanding kind of what is involved in establishing those functionalities and the settings for them and what has been done in other places. Would that be a reasonable thing to do, is to schedule 2 weeks from now, same time, maybe go to noon, right? So that we have enough time for both a presentation and a discussion?
Yes, sir.
Does anybody not be able to do that?
Excuse me, this is Abbas.
Yeah, Abbas.
So in 2 weeks, are we coming back with a suggestion for the subgroups, or what is the intent of or what do you expect out of the next meeting when we have it 2 weeks?
Well, Travis, if you think that you can organize a couple of people to bring us essentially an understanding, make a presentation, if not a proposal, on what we need to do, right? And how long you think it'll take to do it, and maybe examples of how it's been done in other places. When I look at some of these technical reports that we've included in our resources, I see charts of numbers, and I don't know what the numbers mean, right? So I think that there's some basic education that we need before we decide exactly how to accomplish what we want to accomplish.
Agreed. Sounds good.
Okay.
So the problem I think with the most manufacturers is that there is a parallel call at the very same time, which ends at 12:30 Central Time. And this is probably the reason as well, because John Bergner and others are not here.
Okay. We're kind of constrained in when we have an availability. Thursday mornings have always been the best time. I think I'm going to have to take it into consideration for maybe changing the schedule in the future, and then it would be like a Tuesday rather than a Thursday. But I appreciate you bringing that up, because we do want to make sure that we have entities like Enphase and others involved, at least at some level.
Just a quick clarification on that, Art, from Matthew Tisdale. Is the parallel meeting that manufacturers are involved in, is it weekly or is it every other week?
It's about the power control system CRD for CO 7041, which is somehow involved in this topic as well. And it's every week.
It's every week. How many people? Well, obviously, if you're conflicted, you're not here, right? Does anybody else have a problem with this Thursday time frame? I mean, we would have to kind of like really work on something else that's available.
Yeah, there's also a P2800.2 meeting for IBR transmission connected that so I might be late, but don't worry, I can either join late or skip out of the other one early. So, but if you could slip it another half hour later, that would help.
You mean start at 10:30 and go to 12:30?
Yeah.
Does anybody have an objection to that? I mean, it's pretty clear for us. Hearing no objection, Margie, can you take a note that we'll schedule 2 weeks from now, beginning at 10:30, going to 12:30? And Travis is going to help us understand. Travis, do you need to recruit folks to help you?
Yeah, I mean, I should at least send out, for feedback, presentation materials.
Okay. We got so many PNM people. Somebody from PNM want to volunteer to coordinate with Travis, put you to work. And certainly, anybody else that wants to do it. All right. I don't have enough information to fully scope out a roadmap yet, right? In terms of timing, when this has to done. I mean, for me, these basic autonomous functions, all right, if we change the date to March, that gives us a little bit more time and a sense. So kind of like we have a starting point and an end date. But of course, there's more work that happens after that. So how about also on the agenda for next time will be how we establish the roadmap for the continuing work that has to happen after we've determined the settings for the autonomous functions, right? And that's communication protocols, and that's control issues, knowing that we're probably not going to resolve them in the near term, right? But to understand what our options are, but really to just establish what a pathway should be. It may have timeline attached, may not, but kind of like what steps we need to do. Is anybody willing to take a look at that? And this would be most helpful for somebody that's worked in another jurisdiction that has dealt with those issues like California, Hawaii, to maybe just bring us a straw proposal of kind of what's involved and what we have to accomplish over, kind of step by.
Brian, I can try to put that together. I have a kind of basic, more high level as well as high level presentation.
Okay, Brian, thank you very much, Irek. Okay, so we have two things on the agenda. What is the appetite for, really basic, go back to, this is what 1547 is about, and like that timeline that was shown earlier, when things are expected to happen. Do we need to go through that again, or can we just post materials that you can self-educate with? Because we had invited, folks like Michael Ropp and Tom Keys from the labs to help if that's necessary. And I'm certainly, I don't want to jump ahead of people because you get lost. I mean, even I get lost with some of the conversations, but I want to make sure that kind of like we pull the folks who are not as familiar with this stuff along and take advantage of the folks that are very familiar with it to help keep us moving. No recommendations on that? Maybe we can bring that up next time if there's something that's really basic that people don't understand. We'll have a conversation about that. Okay. Brian, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you.
Oh, sorry. Was the question just on whether people need more information on the timeline issues?
No, on the basic realm of what we're doing, right? Even to the fact that what the hell is 1547 about, right? Or 1741 for that matter. I think what we'll try and do is just to make materials available, and please do not be afraid to ask questions. I mean, view this group here that we have convened as a tremendous resource of understanding, okay? And it's really important that we get it right and not waste time. And asking good questions is not wasting time. Asking good questions helps everybody else because that helps everybody understand, okay, we can't jump ahead until we deal with this issue. Or maybe there's a misunderstanding, or maybe there's something that really needs to happen. I'm here as a representative of the commission, and let me tell you that there is almost nobody at the commission level that really understands this stuff. So part of my job is to get you to help me translate it into actionable regulatory policy. Okay, that's really my task. I see that Brian's posted a resource. We will get that, and if I don't already have it, we'll put it in our OneDrive. Okay, I think that we've kind of set it out. Margie, do you want to, you're taking notes, do you want to kind of go over what I think I've agreed to?
Yeah,
Or
great.
Colin's good at notes too.
Right, it sounds like we've agreed to reconvene this group on February 24th, 10:30 to 12:30, with two primary agenda topics. One, Travis and anyone else you recruit to put together a presentation and description of what some steps forward might be on determining the autonomous function settings. And then Brian Liddick, with your lead, the second agenda item is to put together maybe a proposed roadmap for then taking on not just those autonomous function setting determination, but then addressing the communication and controls issues going forward, and some representative time frame for that activity, just to get the group on the same thinking for schedule. And I think those were the two main agenda items, Arthur, for our meeting on the 24th. Is there anything else you wanted to put there? And then I have got a couple of logistics announcements.
No, Matthew, were you going to say something? Matthew Still? No. Okay. No, the only other thing that was on my agenda was to make sure that we had contact information for everybody. I presume that the list of people that I identified going down the list, we have emails at least, and maybe telephone numbers for all the other folks that had not immediately been identified seem to be from PNM. So can somebody just organize and send us a list of your emails? And this is Andrea and Anthony and Charlotte and Debray and Frank, and we should have Frank, and Jackie and Leon and Philip and Ron. Make sure that we have your contact information so that Margie can put it into a spreadsheet, and then we'll share that spreadsheet with you. And anybody else that may have joined that I missed.
Right, that was one of my logistics announcements. Please send to me, mltatro@earthlink.net. And I will send to all of you that I have emails for. I'll send you the minutes and the summary from this meeting, but you can either put in chat now or you can separately send me your contact information. Arthur, we don't have that many phone numbers, particularly for the folks from the equipment manufacturing world. If you would do the favor of sending a phone number, that might be helpful as well. And if you have resources, like some of you have identified here in the chat, we will go find those and put those in the OneDrive folder. But also, if you have resources and you're finding OneDrive challenging or something, feel free to send those to me or to Arthur. I'm happy to load them in the OneDrive folder as well. So we'll make sure that that link is in our meeting summary. And I think that's everything that I had, Arthur, at this point.
Okay, great, thank you. Anybody have anything else? Anybody have a birthday coming up? We could sing happy birthday to you. I will say, I spent a long time in California, and it is the month that our Asian communities celebrate Lunar New Year. So Gong Hei Fat Choi to everyone. And thank you so much for joining us. I really look forward to this. This is going to be a lot more fun than phase one, right?
So Arthur, there's just one remaining question I see in the chat that we didn't answer. Let me just bring that so we don't leave anything open-ended. Leon asked about what the term of this phase 2 effort is. Obviously that's being determined, but are there other phase 2 issues that you expect will be tackled simultaneously, or is it too early to tell?
It's a little early to tell exactly, but in phase 1, we identified things that would go into a phase 2, but the commission is determining that several of those issues are really better addressed in grid modernization, right? But I anticipate that phase 2 is going to have to tackle the issue of interconnection queue. So it's not really about inverters, it's really about the logistics of managing an influx of new projects that are attaching to the utility system. That phase 1 got complicated by the adoption of the Community Solar Act, SB 84, because what happened was we went into phase 1 with the intent that what we were trying to do was to solve some constraint issues for rooftop solar, for small behind the meter systems. And then all of a sudden we're confronted with issues related to much larger projects, right? And a timeline that was fairly aggressive in that the commission has to get its community solar rules in place by April 1st of this year, then go through a process for solicitation and then contracts and interconnection studies and all of that. So a lot of those issues came up in phase 1 that I'll say complicated things greatly. Whatever we need to deal with can possibly go in phase 2, but the commission hasn't decided exactly when. With anything that the commission is working on right now, we hope to complete it by the end of the year, because those of you who are not in New Mexico should understand that as of January 1st of next year, it's going to be a completely different commission. That instead of the elected commissions, the 5 elected commissioners, because of a change out of a referendum from 2 years ago, it's going to be 3 appointed commissioners. And so part of my job and others who work for the commission is to get a lot of fundamental stuff in place so that the new commission can just like begin acting on it, right? And interconnection is one of those issues. So with luck, we will be able to deal with phase 2 issues this calendar year, decision in December, such that the new commission doesn't have to deal with hangover issues and learning curves and all of that stuff. And we're going to see what happens. Okay. I see a new name, Alaric Baboj. Can you just identify yourself, Alaric? Because you haven't worked with us in the past that I know of. No. Okay, next time. Thank you all very much. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, thank you.
And always kind of, you know, you can contact me if you have questions. All right.
Thank you, Art.
Thanks, Arthur.
Thank you.